talking about the sport. Your take was embarrassing.
At this moment, whoops.
I blew it. That's the best you can do.
Hey, Max, what up, dog? How about them Clippers?
Just an absolute positive choke job, period. I mean, talk about somebody that should shell up.
The loss last night wasn't devastating. It was a tragedy.
You owe America a public apology.
Sorry, LeBron. You're still the best player in the world after all. Kawhi blew it.
Max is the protagonist in the tragedy. How are we feeling this morning, Max? How are you doing today?
I feel great. My Lakers are still in it, Molly.
Oh, your Lakers. Claim them now, New Yorker.
I'm a Lakers fan.
Stephen A., how are we feeling?
Stephen A. is a Knicks fan. Who's feeling good today?
Well, I just want to thank Max Kellerman personally for subjecting me to high quality information, because what I did was take the liberty to reach out to a couple of economists. You know, he brought up economists during his basketball argument yesterday. So I took the liberty of calling a couple, you know, just to educate myself on the world of economics. And so, I mean, that's just two additional new sources that I have that's going to educate me about that particular portion of the world. So I want to thank Max Kellerman for bringing that up during a basketball argument. Thank you very, very much. It's very.
Are you all into the John Maynard Keynes now and the ongoing debate?
Well, I'm not all. I'm not all into them when I'm making a basketball argument, but certainly when it comes to economics, I'm going to listen and pay rapt attention to what they have to say.
All right.
Well, you
I'm
should
falling asleep
consider
now with
kind
this
of
conversation.
broadening, expanding your horizons, and include, cross-referencing information from different.
I do every
fields.
day just by being with you, Max.
Oh
I
my
do every
gosh.
day just by
It is
being
hard
with
to
you, Max.
decipher
I do
through
every
the information I get everywhere, including from you two, on all subjects. But let's get to it, y'all. Is trouble brewing, excuse me if I could speak, with the Clippers, who are no longer in the bubble after the Nuggets sent them packing? So during Game 2, Montrezl Harrell, Paul George get into a heated exchange during a timeout. According to Yahoo Sports' Chris Haynes, early in the second quarter, a struggling George had committed 2 careless turnovers in less than a minute. The second mishap, a half-court pass to Montrezl Harrell that got picked off by Jamal Murray. Seconds later, Clippers called timeout. Harrell approached his teammate about this, and his lack of accountability set off the NBA Sixth Man of the Year. Max, tell me this. Are you confident that this Clippers roster, as presently constructed, can ever win a chip?
No, I'm not. Not after what I saw in Game 7, and actually throughout the bubble, especially from this Clippers team. But they never really got it going fully throughout the regular season either. And look, Kawhi Leonard, he choked in Game 7. And so much of his reputation or his standing, as far as I'm concerned, is based on his postseason play, that I can't have him the #1 player in the world after doing that, right? But Kawhi Leonard's been an extremely reliable, to say the least, playoff performer throughout his career. Before he was a superstar, while he was a star and an emerging superstar, and then since he's been a superstar, this last series notwithstanding, which for the most part he was excellent in, actually, but choked in the moment of truth. There's no two ways about it. So I'm not worried about Kawhi, really. But he obviously needs support. And his Robin in this Batman and Robin scenario, Paul George, has not been able to turn the corner in the playoffs. He has consistently, Stephen A. mentioned, hitting the backboard on that three-point shot. Stephen A., I had the same reaction. You was like, what? And it's been like that throughout his career, when you've needed Paul George most. So, since Paul George is that guy, they need a third guy. Because it's not like you have 2 MVP caliber players when you need the most, the way Denver did with Jokic and Jamal Murray, the way the Lakers do with LeBron and AD. You need another guy, Drew Holiday or something like that. It's not like every team doesn't want Drew Holiday, but you need a guy who can create off the dribble, get his own shot, set up teammates, and defend. You need a real star. Whether or not it's a superstar, it's a star, and maybe a guy who's a superstar under pressure if you have Paul George. Here's the problem, guys. You probably need to move Paul George to get him. But Drew Holiday and Kawhi is not enough to win a championship, right? What would you get for Paul George? So then you think, okay, are there enough other pieces on this team to move to bring in a guy like that? Does the combination of Montrezl Harrell and Patrick Beverley in trades, right? Because they don't make a lot of money considering the way they produce. Can that get you something like a Drew Holiday or a third wheel, who's really would be a second wheel under pressure, to pair with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George? If the answer is yes to that, then you fundamentally changed your roster. So I think as presently constructed, no, they need to make a major change, something like what I just outlined.
I disagree with you, Max. I think I take a totally different view than you on this, from the standpoint that I think because of the way that they performed in the last 3 games of this series, which ultimately sent them home, I think you keep them together. I don't think they necessarily need anything new in order to win a chip. You keep Doc Rivers, you keep that coaching staff, you keep every single one of those players, even though Montrezl Harrell is approaching free agency and he's got some explaining to do as to why he only averaged 2.6 rebounds per game in this series when Jokic averaged 13 rebounds along with his 24 points on 51% shooting and nearly 40% from three-point range. I think that, obviously Harrell has something to prove. The biggest reason that I think that you keep them together is a couple of things. I think that Kawhi, being the superstar that he is, still a top 5 player in the game. I think he has a lot to make up for, considering the fact that this was his first, venture into being that face of a franchise, that number 1 option with the expectations draped on his shoulders to come into the Clippers organization. Well, there's but so many games I'm going to play. There's but so many practices that I'm going to attend. I'm going to be in shape, make no mistake about it, but I'm going to show up with the practice when I want to show up. I'm going to miss practices when I feel I need to miss practices, etc., etc. As a leader of a franchise, you set a very, very bad tone. If you're Lou Williams, boy, do you have a lot of making up to do. The best part of you in this series was your post-game press conference in the aftermath of losing Game 7, because he was very eloquent and candid in his assessment of what transpired, but he only averaged 10 points this series, and he was horrific from three-point range, shoot like 14%. That's not Lou Williams. This is a 2-time sixth man of the year. This brother is a star scoring the basketball. He is a professional scorer. There was no excuse for him to be as anemic as he was, other than the fact that clearly you didn't really, really want to be there. That's why they got a new nickname for you, Lemon Pepper Lou. You will understand why that transpired. You've got some making up to do. And then, of course, there's Paul George. We can't ignore the situation involving Paul George. I'm here to tell you, Max, one of the nicest dudes you'll ever want to meet in your life. Impossible to root against. He is a star in this league, but nevertheless, boy, did he not show up. It was Brick City. It was a straight choke job on his part as well. And what the biggest thing about Paul George that he needs to pay attention to, Paul George is in danger. Are you ready for this, Max? He's in danger of becoming the second coming of Dwight Howard. Remember, Dwight Howard was the man in Orlando, just like Paul George was the man in Indiana. He wanted to leave. He goes to L.A., he ends up going to Houston, and then before long, he's a journeyman, Washington, Charlotte, etc., because the star that he once was, he was no more. And so because of that, everybody says they harken back to that. He should have never left Orlando. That was an ideal situation for him. They built a franchise around him, even though he didn't win the chip. They got to the finals in 2009, and now Dwight Howard is a role player, even though I think he's doing an exceptional job in L.A. in a reserve role, and I think he's going to play a big role in this series along with JaVale McGee and Anthony Davis, triple teaming, basically throwing a 3-headed monster at Jokic on the defensive side of the floor. But in the end, what it comes down to is that if you're Paul George, okay, you were in Indiana, then you were in OKC. Now you're in LA with the Clippers. And Max just said in order for this team to get the parts that it needs, even though I don't agree with you, you're talking about how you'd have to move Paul George in order to do that. So I think all of those things elevates the level of incentive. I think you keep the Clippers as is, stand pat. They were embarrassed. They're highly motivated. You anticipate that a pandemic won't stall next season, that you'll move full steam ahead. And I think you keep them together for one last run. Remember, both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, 2-1. 2 years with a third-year option for each player. They could have signed for a 4-year deal or whatever. Neither of them did it. They can opt out after this upcoming season. This season could be on the line. If you're Ballmer, I think you give everybody one more shot, letting them know I will clean house in a heartbeat, and y'all will be gone from Tinseltown if y'all don't get it done next season. I keep them together.
Couple things. Paul George and Dwight Howard, to me, are very different. I understand you mean bouncing from team to team, But Paul George is a guy without
Yeah,
a
that's
real
all I was talking
weakness in
about.
his game. He's
That's
such
all
a
I meant.
well-rounded. He's such a well-rounded player. He's balled wherever he's been. The issue is he's miscast as a centerpiece. He's really what Paul George is best, as we see in the playoffs, is a top-notch kind of complementary player, but maybe not the second most important player on the team even when it matters most. Whereas Dwight Howard was much more one-dimensional, and as the league changed, it really didn't favor the way he played. I understand what you mean. Though, bouncing around, but I think Paul George's intrinsic, not only ability, but well-rounded game will keep him as a very valuable player for a while, right? Whether or not he's really a guy you can rely on under pressure. In terms of the Clippers' motivation, yes, they will be highly motivated. But what you noticed about their offense was they didn't really have a creator. Who creates the offense? Really, it's Kawhi Leonard. When he draws, he's become a much better passer, and that's the guy who really you run the offense through. But is Kawhi best used that way, in fact? Or should you get a more traditional ball handler like Drew Holiday, who can play off the ball also, obviously, who can shoot, who can defend, who steps up big time under pressure? And in order to get a guy like that, I agree, you're best off keeping Kawhi and Paul George. But then the question becomes that entire supporting cast. Like if I asked you, Stephen A., if you had to move Montrezl Harrell and Patrick Beverley, would you do it for as I mentioned, Lou Williams, for Drew Holiday? I would. What if you had to also get rid of Lou Williams? Like, in other words, what if you had to give everything you had except your centerpiece players for a guy like that? And then you try to fill in the blanks like the Lakers just did. The Clippers may be better off doing that. And by the way, no knock against Montrezl Harrell, who played poorly, but was completely outmatched by Jokic. Like, he's not in Jokic's class. There's nothing he can do with Jokic. It doesn't mean he's not a good player. He's a solid player. He's just not a star.
Well, thank you for that soliloquy. My retort would be this. 13 rebounds to 2 is a problem when you're looking for a new contract if you're Montrezl Harrell. That's number one. That's more important. That's most importantly to point out. And number two, what it really comes down to, again, is I am not saying that you couldn't do things to buffer your chances as a championship. What I'm saying is it's a long shot that you're going to be able to pull all of those things off. Do they have enough right now to win a title next year? Yes, they do. If they act like a team and come together and stop being prima donnas, yes, they could, and I think they would. I think they'd have
Paul
a great
George
shot.
under pressure?
And I would, if I'm Ballmer, I would try even Paul George under pressure. Yes, give him one last shot because we know that he has the requisite skills. If I'm Ballmer, I give them one last shot, and then that's it.
I wonder if Kawhi regrets his decision to leave Toronto. We'll see, guys. Clippers 0-8 now, as you can see on the screen, with a chance to clinch a conference finals berth. But I want to mention 7 of 8 of those games are double-digit losses. So haven't been close. We'll leave it there. When we come back here on First Take, we get a lot more to dive into. A Stack show. Bruce Arians speaks out again regarding Tom Brady and his play. You don't want to miss Max and Stephen A. debate what it means. Plus, Seahawks superstar DK Metcalf joins us live to discuss his Seahawks and their upcoming matchup against the Patriots. Don't miss that. This is First Take.
The NFL's back, y'all, and First Take is so hyped about it, but we want to see you rep your team. We want you all decked out in your favorite fan gear, and the most hyped fans are going to end up on First Take. So send us the video, tag First Take on Twitter, and we'll see you on the show.